Hey y'all, welcome back. Today, I'm dropping another throwback video all about trustee Tiffany Henyard. The whole point of these videos, to take a step back and really understand how the Dolton government and politics played into the Senate. Why someone like Tiffany Henyard even got the chance to become mayor of Dolton. And when I say got the chance, I'm not talking about women of color not deserving opportunities. No, not at all. What I mean is, women like Tiffany Henyard should never be handed this kind of chance. Why? Because all this drama, all this controversy, it follows her everywhere.
I gotta have all this controversy. I gotta have all this back and forth with my boy. For what?
Ain't no stopping us now.
No, God, please, no, no!
When I put you in your trustee house, trustee Belcher, never would have been a trustee. I don't want to make it possible for you guys to sit where you are now, and all I want to do is help the people. That's it.
Women like Tiffany Henyard, who clearly don't have the qualifications for any leadership role, whether it's in fast food, retail, or government, should have never been picked to run a village. That's just my honest opinion. From the moment she got in that seat, it's been nothing but chaos, because folks wanted to control her. They thought she was some young, naive woman who'd just sit back and do whatever they told her to do. Newsflash, she's no puppet. But then you've got trustee Tammy Brown. She is a puppet. She even straight up said she doesn't read. Wait, hold on, Niff, she don't read. How does she even know how to vote when she's in these meetings? That means someone's just telling her how to vote. Please stop, get some help. She's literally being told how to vote. All right, so now we're going back to the previous administration before Tiffany Henyard became mayor, and we're going to highlight the behavior of some key players. During the 2014 board meetings, of course, Tiffany Henyard's behavior will be front and center, too, because during this time, she was still a trustee for the village of Dolton. In those meetings, you'll notice Tiffany often teamed up with Robert Hunt, and Stan Brown called them the dynamic trio. When it came to voting on a lot of issues, these three would almost always vote the same way. First up, we're going to hear them discuss the budget. And right here, this guy, Stan Irving, was the village administrator back then. What he's doing is recommending certain cuts to save the village money. But then, he makes a recommendation that totally shocked me, and you'll hear the residents' reactions too. So let's watch this clip, and I'll jump back in after. What you distributed, Mayor, was a document on village letterhead. This was emailed to the trustees before the first budget hearing and then handed out at the hearings. It's my analysis, and I've signed at the bottom of page 2 the staffing recommendations. If all of these were followed, it could save the village over $190,000. Going to the administrative department, I'm recommending eliminating the full-time administrative assistant position, which was in last year's budget at $55,000. I'm proposing creating a part-time assistant to the administrator position. At $12 an hour, 25 hours a week, that totals $15,600, compared to the $55,000 budgeted last year. Also, I recommended my own salary go from $78,000 up to $100,000. That didn't get agreed on. It was moved to $85,000. So yeah, while he's pushing all these cuts, he's also asking for himself a $22,000 raise. Money, please, Dot, and honestly, I found it so bold of him to make that kind of suggestion, asking for a raise while simultaneously cutting other jobs out of the budget. Like, really, that's bold. We're not going to dive too deep into the entire budget today, but one thing I do want to mention is that this village administrator eventually got fired down the line for alleged improper behavior. So, I was at a friend's house and happened to notice an older Tribune paper talking about Stan Irving. Now, before he was even hired or appointed here in the village of Dolton, he had already been fired from 2 different jobs, one in Benville, and the other, I believe, was in Westchester, Illinois. Fired twice, and I'm sitting here wondering, why was he even allowed to get this job? Why wasn't there proper protocol to check his background? Why is this guy still on the payroll, especially with all these sexual harassment allegations swirling around him? It just tells me maybe you won't say you don't care, but someone out there definitely isn't doing their homework or following protocol. That's the issue here. The fact that he's got these serious allegations hanging over him is just so sad. And even more upsetting, my tax dollars are still paying this man. So yeah, as we heard, he was let go for some alleged misconduct involving sexual harassment claims. Now, moving on with the board meeting. Next up, we hear about the Dolton firefighters. Yes, the firefighters. They weren't just fighting for fair treatment during Tiffany Henyard's administration. Their issues with being overworked and understaffed date back to 2014 and even before. Their union contracts and collective bargaining agreements with the village weren't being honored, so they had to file grievances. I know I touched on this in my last video, but in this one, we're hearing from other trustees as well. So let's listen to the mayor address the problem, and another trustee will also weigh in with her opinion. This grievance, which everyone has on their desk, shows the days and number of firefighters who have worked 3 days in a row. One of the issues here is that by working these triplets, the village is not only violating the collective bargaining agreement, but also placing a fatigue factor on the unit members, putting their safety and the safety of the village of Dolton citizens at risk. Everybody has this copy, and just to clarify, 3 days in a row means 3 24-hour days. Straight, that's a total of 72 hours. Here's a question. If it's 24-hour shift straight, I get the fatigue part. When you're working 24 hours, that's tough, but you don't get a call every single time you're on duty. Right? Well, we are actually 360 calls ahead of last year's pace. And what about storm days when they don't get any sleep because they're running non-stop? Then they have to work the next day, and then the next day after that. Okay, I get that. But are they counting the days they had to be at the station for 3 days straight and then had to respond multiple times? Or are they counting just the days they were physically there, whether or not they had to respond to calls? Do you understand what I'm asking? No. What I'm saying is, I understand their schedule. They work several days, go home a couple, then come back. There may be incidents where they can't leave and have to stay a day or two, but this grievance is specifically about fatigue. Is it about fatigue because they're out fighting fires, or, hold on, let me finish. So as we heard, Trustee Sabrina Smith was basically questioning the firefighters and the fire chief about whether these fatigue claims were valid. She argued that they weren't always working 72 hours straight, kind of downplaying their complaints about being overworked and stressed from those long hours. Honestly, I don't think someone with zero firefighting experience should argue with an actual firefighter and the fire chief and tell them their fatigue claims aren't valid. Because, let's be real, that's exactly what she was implying. She was basically saying since they're not on calls every minute while they're working, they shouldn't feel tired from working 72 hours straight. I don't know about you, but if I was at work for 72 hours, whether I'm busting my butt or just sitting at a desk being there that long is mentally draining. Let me know if you agree with me in the comments. Plus, firefighters have to be ready mentally and physically at any moment to jump up and run out to fight fires and save lives. Now, let's keep going so we can hear what the fire chief had to say in response to her argument about their fatigue. Is this grievance because they're out fighting fires like there are infernos all over the place? Or is this grievance because they're just at work? But they are just at work hand. They're running calls at all hours every night. They have to be ready to jump on a call at any time. We run calls all night long. But that's not what she asked you. That's okay? That's not what I'm asking. We might cut some more stuff so we don't keep going in circles. Of course, they're not running calls for 72 hours straight. That makes your question not make sense. But still, they're missing time with their families just because they are at work, working too many hours. They are working. So, like Sabrina said earlier, even though firefighters are at work, they're not out fighting fires the whole time. She doesn't quite get where the fatigue complaints are coming from. But then we hear the fire chief explain the same point I'm making. Hear whether or not they're fighting fires constantly. Just being at work, away from home, ready to jump out at a moment's notice is work itself. I think you get the point by now. The Dolton firefighters have always struggled to have their concerns taken seriously. It often feels like their complaints fall on deaf ears. But I will say, at least the mayor at that time was on their side and did try to speak up for them. Okay. They go to bed at 10 o'clock, could be up at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning. Fire the other day, 2:30 a.m., up all night. They fought a fire at 2:30, got back at 7 o'clock, and had to work the whole next day. They didn't sleep the night before, so 72 straight hours not at home. Being here, can't leave, but they're just at work. Running calls all night long. They have to be prepared to go on the call. We run calls all night long. Now, unlike Tiffany Henyard, because we all know how she acted in meetings when Dolton firefighters came with concerns. This is what she did. We will continue to serve despite the fact our health insurance isn't being paid. Our retirement funds are being taken from us and workers. Compensation claims aren't handled properly. These are serious issues and they need to be fixed immediately. All right, call the next person. Call the next person. Now, moving on, there's an argument about budget cuts. And this trustee right here, Trustee Pearson, calls out that certain trustees voted to raise their own expenses while cutting other things in the village. Let us watch. Money. Why don't you cut your own salary? You know what? Why don't you cut yourself? I cut mine. They're raising it. Trustee Hunt is adding $4,000 per trustee for training. We already get $13,000 that we don't even have to turn in receipts for. Why spend more money? Well, right now, come on. So Trustee Pearson points out, Robert Wright, voted to raise the trustees' training budget by $4,000 each. But he also mentions they already get $13,000 that they don't have to provide receipts for. So why did they vote for even more money? First of all, I think it's crazy they don't have to turn in receipts for $13,000 of taxpayer money. That's a huge blind spot in the system and explains how some people have been able to mismanage funds from the start. No wonder Tiffany Henyard went completely off the rails once she got access to more taxpayer money as mayor. Wasteful spending wasn't from Tiffany Henyard, came from the Board of Trustees. The so-called Fantastic Four, that's who wasted your money. All I can do is help you see what we see. That's it. She was already used to spending taxpayer dollars willy-nilly without being held accountable. So why wouldn't the dynamic trio trustee Tiffany Henyard, Trustee Robert Hunt, and Trustee Stan Brown take advantage of a broken system? They saw an opportunity to spend money unchecked, and they ran with it, in my opinion. And then, as Trustee Pearson was making his point about the unnecessary extra $4,000, you could hear Tiffany jump in and try to brush off his argument. Why would we spend $4,000 more money for... Well, right now, come on, we're taking advantage of these people. Right now, we don't even know. Yeah, listen to her, right from the start. It felt like a total don't look behind the curtain situation, a hot mess from jump. What really blew me away was when they pushed to squeeze an extra $4,000 out of the budget just for trustee trainings. Especially considering how Mayor Tiffany Henyard was strict about hotel stays for trustees at conferences. She made it clear she wouldn't pay for hotels at the IML conference, telling trustees to either bring a credit card or pay out of pocket, reminding them she herself always commuted because the venue was just 15 minutes away. Yet she mentioned there was now an expense account about $5,000 per trustee that had just been made available today for these expenses, which showed how the trustees didn't even have those funds beforehand. Meanwhile, as a trustee, Henyard had no issue spending over $13,000 on her own trainings without needing to provide receipts. This blatant hypocrisy perfectly captured the double standards between her time as trustee and as mayor. Many felt she became mayor partly to get back at how she'd been treated before, but ironically, she ended up acting a lot like the previous mayor, even repeating some of the same confrontational tactics. When you look at footage of their meetings side by side, the pattern is obvious: shouting over each other, denying recognition, arguing about motions, and controlling the agenda to the point where one trustee's items were removed by the mayor, only to be reposted later. The chaos, lack of respect, and power struggles made it clear this wasn't just a normal board meeting, it was a battle for control, and the taxpayers were watching it all unfold. When I asked why my agenda items were removed, I still didn't get a clear answer. I even copied Attorney Murphy on the message, but no one responded. The excuse given was that they didn't want to reassess Chief Collins. But that didn't explain why the other two agenda items were also left out. When I pressed for clarity for future agenda submissions, the response was just, "We're moving forward." It felt like they were shutting down any real discussion. Then, when it was time for citizens to address the board, the mayor basically shut it down, saying, "I'm not the boss of anybody, but I am the leader of this town, and I run these meetings." If she wanted to move on, then that was final, no room for debate. Honestly, it all sounded so familiar, almost like a replay of the previous mayor's style. I even did another video comparing their mannerisms and phrases, showing how Tiffany Henyard seemed to have taken a page or two from the former mayor's playbook. The only difference was that, from what I could tell in the board meetings, the previous mayor didn't splurge the way Henyard did. So while the power struggles and attitude were similar, their approach to spending wasn't quite the same. That's it for today, you guys. If you want more flashbacks from these board meetings, drop a comment below. And if you liked this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're new here.